My wife left me and came back years later to take our daughter away. For 5 years, our life was normal, even happy. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 2 years when our daughter, Lily, was born. I still remember the day we brought her home from the hospital. Emily was exhausted but smiling, holding Lily close, whispering how she'd always protect her. Those first few months were a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and early morning feedings, but we worked as a team. I took night shifts so Emily could rest, and she handled the daytime while I worked. We were new parents, figuring things out, but we were in it together. Or at least I thought we were. As Lily grew, our routine became more structured. Emily went back to work part-time when Lily was 6 months old, and I adjusted my schedule to help. Weekends were ours. We'd take Lily to the park, let her run through the grass, and feed ducks by the pond. Evenings were filled with bedtime stories and bath time, Lily giggling as she splashed in the tub. Everything felt right. We had our struggles, who doesn't? But we were a family. Then, about 2 years ago, things started changing. Emily took on more hours at work, saying they needed her on weekends. I didn't think much of it at first. She had always been ambitious. But then, my friends started making offhand comments. They'd seen her at a cafe on a Saturday when she was supposed to be working. Another time, someone mentioned spotting her at a restaurant with a man. I brushed it off. People make mistakes. Maybe they thought they saw her, but it was someone else. Still, things felt different at home. Emily was distant. She no longer laughed as much when Lily did something silly. She didn't reach for my hand when we sat on the couch. I told myself she was just tired, that work was wearing her down. But in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, I asked her if something was wrong. She hesitated, then admitted it. She had met someone else. She said she hadn't planned for it to happen, but she had fallen in love with him. She had been afraid to tell me, knowing how much it would hurt. I sat there, numb. I had imagined arguments, distance, even growing apart over time, but I never thought she would just replace me. The hardest part wasn't even losing her. It was knowing she had been pulling away for months and still let me believe everything was okay. For the next couple of days, we barely spoke. I told her I wanted to fix things, that I was willing to forgive her if she wanted to stay. I didn't want to break our family apart, but she had already made up her mind. One day, she just left. No note, no goodbye to Lily, just gone. That first week was the hardest. Lily kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Every time the doorbell rang, she'd run to the door, expecting it to be her. I had no idea what to say. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her mother chose to leave? At night, after Lily was asleep, I'd sit in the living room, staring at the walls, trying to figure out what went wrong. My closest friends stepped in when I needed them most. They dropped by in the evenings, bring dinner, help me put Lily to bed. Some nights, they just sat with me, letting me process everything in silence. I didn't file for divorce. I told myself I was waiting, hoping she'd change her mind, but deep down, I knew the truth. I was just too broken to accept that it was over. Weeks turned into months, then a year, and still nothing from Emily. Lily and I learned to live without her. Mornings were rushed, getting her dressed, packing her lunch, making sure she had everything for school. Evenings were spent helping her with homework, making dinner, reading bedtime stories. I became both parents, learning how to braid her hair and help her pick out outfits. We established our own traditions, Sunday pancake breakfasts, movie nights with popcorn, and summer trips to the local pool. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was ours. Then, when Lily started kindergarten, the teasing began. Other kids would ask where her mom was. Some told her she had run away because she didn't love her. She'd come home, eyes red from holding back tears, asking why her mommy didn't want her anymore. Those nights were the worst. I told her that wasn't true, that sometimes adults make mistakes, but it had nothing to do with her. I don't know if she believed me. 3 years have passed since Emily left. I've adjusted, but there are still moments when the weight of it all hits me. Sometimes, I catch Lily staring at the door, as if hoping her mother will walk through it. Other times, she asks me questions I don't have answers to, but we keep going. I make sure she knows she's loved, that no matter what, I will always be here for her. I don't know if Emily will ever come back. I don't know if I'll ever get an explanation that makes sense. But I do know that I have a daughter who needs me, and that's all that matters now. It was a Saturday like any other. Lily and I had our morning routine down to a science. She'd wake up early, climb into my bed, and we'd lie there for a while before getting up for breakfast. Pancakes were our weekend staple, and she loved helping me mix the batter, though most of it usually ended up on the counter. After breakfast, we played for a while, and then she picked out a dress for our outing. That day, we had plans to see the premiere of a new Disney movie. Lily had been looking forward to it all week. I was in the middle of gathering our things when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a second, I assumed it was one of my friends dropping by unannounced. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. Emily was standing there, the wife who had vanished 3 years ago, the woman I had once loved and trusted more than anything. She was real, standing in front of me as if she had never left. Beside her stood a man, someone I didn't recognize. Maybe he was the one she had left us for. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My mind struggled to process the situation. She looked different. Not dramatically so, but enough that I noticed. Her hair was a little shorter, her face seemed more tired, and yet she still had the same presence that used to fill our home. Before I could react, she held up a bag and said she had brought gifts for Lily. Lily stood a few feet away, watching the scene unfold. She hesitated, clutching her stuffed bunny, the same one she had since she was a baby. She looked at Emily with wide eyes, recognition flickering across her face but not certainty. Emily stepped forward, crouched down, and wrapped her arms around our daughter. "I'm your mother, don't you recognize me?" she asked. Lily hesitated for a second but nodded. Over the next few days, Emily started visiting regularly. I didn't know how to react. I couldn't forbid her from seeing Lily, but I also couldn't just pretend like nothing had happened. She never explained why she had left, why she had stayed away for 3 years without so much as a phone call. I asked, but she brushed off my questions with vague responses. Then, one evening, she told me she was filing for divorce. The words felt like a punch to the gut. She had already filed, and we were now in the waiting period. In my mind, the message was clear. She wasn't just divorcing me. She was planning to take Lily. Emily started spending more time with our daughter, bringing her gifts, taking her out. At first, Lily was cautious, but slowly, she started warming up. One night, as I was tucking her into bed, she looked at me with confusion in her eyes and asked me something that made my stomach drop. "Daddy, is it true that you kicked Mommy out of the house?" I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. "Mommy said you made her leave because she fell in love with someone else, and that you told her she couldn't see me anymore. She said she sent me presents on my birthdays, but you didn't let me have them." I felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could she say that to our daughter? She was trying to turn Lily against me. I took a deep breath and told Lily that none of it was true. But I knew then that I couldn't just hope for the best. I had to act. The next morning, I called a lawyer. During the consultation, it became clear that I needed to prepare for a battle. Emily wasn't just coming back into Lily's life. She was trying to rewrite history, to make me the villain so she could take our daughter. I started gathering evidence. I documented everything, our routines, our time together, messages and emails. I reached out to friends who had supported us after she left, people who could vouch for the fact that I had never once stopped Lily from seeing her mother. I requested Lily's school records to show that I had been the one attending parent-teacher meetings, handling doctor's appointments, and making sure she had everything she needed. I also reached out to a child psychologist to ensure Lily would have a safe space to process everything. The reality of the situation sank in. Emily was going to fight for custody, and she was willing to lie to win. But I wouldn't let her take my daughter away. I had been there every single day for Lily while Emily had chosen to disappear. Now, I had to make sure the court saw the truth. I wasn't going to lose my daughter. The divorce was nearing its final stage, but the biggest battle still lay ahead, the custody hearing. I had spent weeks preparing, going through every detail with my lawyer, gathering every piece of evidence, and replaying every moment from the past 3 years in my head. Emily was determined to take Lily away, and I had no doubt she would do whatever it took to make that happen. The thought of losing my daughter, after everything we had been through, was unbearable. I knew I had to fight with everything I had. The courtroom was tense. Both sides had shown up with their witnesses and legal teams. Emily's lawyer was aggressive, well-prepared, and confident. He started by painting a picture of Emily as a devoted mother who had been wrongfully pushed out of her daughter's life. He spoke of her struggles, how she had fought to reconnect with Lily, and how she was the only one capable of providing a loving and stable home. His words were carefully chosen, his tone calculated, and his arguments precise. Then came the witnesses. One by one, Emily's former colleagues took the stand. They claimed that she had always talked about how much she missed her daughter, that she had been devastated when I had allegedly cut her out of Lily's life. Her parents followed, speaking about how heartbroken Emily had been, how they had witnessed her countless attempts to reach out to me, all of which had supposedly been ignored. Every testimony was an attack, an attempt to paint me as cold, controlling, and unfit to raise Lily alone. I sat there, listening to every false claim, feeling my anger rise but knowing I had to stay composed. Then Emily spoke. Her words were filled with emotion, carefully woven with partial truths and outright lies. She looked at the judge and described a version of our marriage that I barely recognized. According to her, I had always been distant, resentful of her success, and unwilling to support her career. She claimed that I had slowly pushed her away and, when she finally fell in love with someone else, I had forced her out and refused to let her see Lily. She spoke of the gifts she had sent, the birthday cards that had never reached our daughter because, in her words, I had hidden them. She said she had spent the last 3 years longing to be part of Lily's life, only to be met with cruelty and rejection from me. I sat there in shock. How could she twist the truth so completely? How could she stand there and lie so effortlessly? I looked at Lily, who was too young to understand the full weight of what was happening but old enough to sense the tension in the room. I had always told myself that, no matter what, I wouldn't let her be caught in the middle of this mess. But here we were. Then it was my turn. My lawyer began by presenting our case. Witnesses from my side came forward. Close friends, neighbors, even some of the parents from Lily's school who had seen me raise her alone for the past 3 years. They spoke about the nights I stayed up with her when she was sick, the way I juggled work and parenting, the time I spent making sure she never felt like she was missing anything in life. They testified about Emily's disappearance, about how she had cut all ties without warning, about how she had never reached out. Not to them, not to me, and certainly not to Lily. Then I spoke. I told the truth, every painful, unfiltered detail. I talked about the years before Emily left, how things had changed, how she had become distant, how I had given her every chance to come clean before she finally admitted she had fallen in love with someone else. I explained how she had left without warning, how I had waited, hoping she would return. Not for me, but for Lily. I described the nights Lily had cried for her mother, the days she had asked questions I didn't know how to answer, the moments I had to find the strength to be both parents to her because Emily had simply vanished. The judge listened carefully to everything. The courtroom was silent as I finished speaking. I wasn't sure if my words had made an impact, but I knew I had spoken from the heart. I had nothing to hide, and I had nothing to gain from lying. At the end of the hearing, the judge announced that the testimonies needed to be reviewed in detail. Too many contradictions had surfaced, and there were discrepancies in the statements given by Emily's witnesses. The next hearing was scheduled, and we were told that a more thorough investigation would be conducted. As I left the courtroom that day, I couldn't help but wonder, will the truth prevail? Will the court see through the lies and manipulation? Or will the legal system fail me, allowing Emily to rewrite history and take Lily away from the only home she has ever known? Only time will tell.